Sir,
I
I
will.
didn't ask you about any of that. I asked you if you
I
understand that
will, however,
Mr.
you,
Matson, don't interrupt me. I've muted Mr. Matson's device because he continues to interrupt me and not let me finish what I'm saying.
let me, let me, let me, let me speak to,
I muted Mr. Matson again because he unmuted himself and interrupted me. I am required to advise you at all stages of the proceeding that you do have a right to be represented by an attorney, and if you can't afford an attorney, the court will appoint one for you at public expense. Do you understand that?
I don't think you'd be violating your oath of office, Your Honor, by allowing me to, the right to a fighting clause.
Sir, I didn't ask you about any of that. I asked you if you understand.
I will, however,
Mr. Matson, don't interrupt me. The question I asked you is whether you understand that you have the right to be represented by an attorney.
I do understand I have a right to be represented by an attorney or not. Yes, sir.
Okay. You've previously waived that right. As I said, I have to advise you that at every stage of the hearing. So I have to ask you again, would you like to be represented by an attorney at this point?
As I started to say, Your Honor, I don't want the representation. However, I will use the help of handling paperwork due to my means here and having access to certain things in paperwork. I will use your court-appointed attorneys just to help with some paperwork.
Okay, so you don't have a right to have the public defender's office do your paperwork or handle any of that. You have the right to have them represent you or not represent you. So that is your choice.
Not represent me, that's fine then.
All right. So you've previously been arraigned on the probation violation. Do you know how you want to proceed? So your options are you can plead to it if you want, which means you'd be admitting guilt. The other option is that I can set it for a hearing and we can have a hearing on the matter, and then I'll decide based on the evidence submitted at that hearing.
Your Honor, all due respect, I wish, are you working under oath of office today, sir?
Sir, I'm not going to answer these questions or deal with this. We've dealt with you before and your sovereign citizen arguments. I've rejected them all.
Citizen.
Sir, do not interrupt me. Do you want to have a hearing or do you want to plead?
I'll take your silence under your oath, Your Honor.
Okay. Do you want to have a hearing or do you want to plead?
I want the hearing. I want to go to trial. I want to go within 90 days to a trial or sooner.
All right. So Sierra will need about a 1-hour hearing on a probation violation.
As well as I'd like you to have the arresting officers that arrested me on that day. I would like their sergeant to be dressed in uniform and at that trial on that day.
In a tense and extraordinary display of modern courtroom drama, a fiery confrontation unfolds across a digital divide, where a self-proclaimed sovereign citizen faces a patient but unyielding judge during a virtual Zoom hearing. The session begins innocently enough, with the judge calmly reviewing the docket and procedural formalities, his voice steady, his posture composed beneath the flag and seal that frame his authority. Participants appear in separate windows: prosecutors, clerks, attorneys, and the defendant, who sits in an orange jumpsuit within the confined gray walls of a correctional facility. From the moment the judge addresses him formally, the man's defiant posture hints at the storm brewing within. He interrupts immediately, insisting he does not consent to the proceedings, declaring himself a living man, separate from the corporate fiction represented by his legal name written in capital letters. His words spill rapidly, a torrent of pseudo-legal jargon and conspiratorial reasoning. The judge attempts to restore order, reminding him to remain respectful, but the man grows louder, his speech erratic yet rehearsed, as if drawn from a script read too many times in dark corners of the internet. He invokes maritime law, common law, and natural rights, claiming the court has no jurisdiction over him because he never agreed to be governed. The courtroom observers remain silent, perhaps stunned, perhaps weary, as the judge, exemplifying judicial patience, explains yet again that the court operates under state law, not personal belief. The defendant waves crumpled papers before the camera, documents filled with seals, self-written declarations, and irrelevant citations from the U.S. Constitution and biblical verses. His voice trembles with both anger and conviction, a man fighting ghosts of authority that exist only in his imagination. The judge warns him once, twice, and then a third time to remain calm and follow proper procedure, but the man's fury only grows. He accuses the judge of treason, the prosecutors of fraud, and the entire system of corruption. He shouts that he does not recognize the name on the case file because it belongs to a dead entity, not the living soul he claims to be. Finally, after another barrage of incoherent declarations, the judge, still polite, still professional, announces, "Mr. Defendant, I am muting you until you can conduct yourself appropriately." The sound of authority cuts sharper than any gavel strike, and the man's voice disappears from the audio feed, his mouth still moving, his hands gesturing wildly. For a moment, there is silence, an eerie pause in the storm. The judge turns to the record, stating for the court reporter that the defendant has been muted for continued disruptive behavior, ensuring that due process remains intact despite the chaos. The camera catches the man's furious expressions, silent now, trapped behind his own walls of belief. The narrator begins to widen the lens, explaining that what unfolds here is not an isolated event but part of a larger and troubling phenomenon. Across the United States and beyond, individuals who identify as sovereign citizens have been challenging court authority for decades, rooted in false interpretations of constitutional law and internet spread conspiracies. They claim independence from governments, taxes, and regulations, asserting that the only true law is natural or divine law, often twisting legal terminology to justify their defiance. The movement gained momentum in the late 20th century, fueled by economic despair, anti-government sentiment, and the rise of online communities that echo these beliefs. Some began as tax protesters, others evolved into militant ideologies. The narrator's tone deepens. What began as a courtroom disturbance now becomes a study of human psychology, a reflection on how misinformation breeds rebellion. Experts describe how sovereign citizens adopt an illusion of mastery over the legal system, believing that arcane wordplay can nullify real-world laws. The belief offers them control in a world they feel powerless within. Yet time and again, these theories collapse under the weight of reality. Judges rule, laws prevail, and the defiant face consequences. The video narration continues, unfolding scenes from other courtrooms, each echoing the same tragic pattern. Individuals refusing to stand, arguing that the flag's fringe proves maritime law, insisting they are private individuals, immune from state prosecution. The judges, representing the structure and patience of justice, respond with calm reasoning, yet the pattern repeats. The narrator explores the emotional roots of this defiance, how economic instability, social isolation, and deep distrust of authority can transform ordinary citizens into true believers of a fantasy. In the Zoom courtroom, our defendant still gestures in silence, his frustration visible. His attorney, visibly uncomfortable, attempts to interject, apologizing to the court and requesting leniency. The judge nods, his demeanor unwavering, remarking, "This court will always listen, but it will not be shouted down." The narration takes on a reflective tone, describing how technology has transformed courtrooms into public stages. Once private legal proceedings now go viral, shared on platforms where every outburst becomes content. The sovereign citizen's meltdown, now muted, becomes a spectacle, hundreds of thousands of viewers online, each with their opinions, memes, and judgments. Yet beneath the humor and chaos lies a serious warning. The erosion of respect for law is not entertainment, it is a symptom of deeper societal fracture. Over the next several minutes, the narrator discusses how misinformation ecosystems thrive on platforms that reward outrage, spreading false legal tactics promising liberation but delivering only imprisonment. Scholars, historians, and former law enforcement officials explain the dangers of these ideologies intersecting with extremism, sometimes leading to violent confrontations, assaults on police officers, and domestic terrorism. As the story circles back to the courtroom, the hearing resumes after a brief recess. The defendant's microphone remains off, his head lowered, anger giving way to exhaustion. The judge, steady and composed, reads the next steps of the case into the record. Justice moves forward, unbothered by the storm. The narrator reflects, law is not a conversation of equals, It is a framework agreed upon by society to protect itself from chaos. And chaos always begins when belief replaces truth. The camera pans across the courtroom windows, each face lit by the glow of a computer screen, symbols of an age where justice and spectacle coexist uncomfortably in digital space. In the final act of the narration, the voice grows philosophical. It reminds viewers that the sovereign citizen movement, though often mocked, represents a profound disconnection between citizens and their institutions. It poses a question: when people stop believing in law, what replaces it? Faith in conspiracies. Personal conviction. The narrator explains how legal education and civic awareness can bridge the gap between citizens and their government, preventing misinformation from breeding rebellion. As the credits near, we return once more to the image of the man in orange, now sitting quietly, staring into the camera, perhaps realizing that his arguments, once shouted with conviction, have vanished into silence. The judge closes the session, the courtroom feed fades, and the narrator delivers a final, solemn line. The law cannot silence belief, but it can outlast it. And in that endurance lies the quiet strength of justice.